In the shop is an Audi A6. Customer contacted us stating he had a noise from the rear end of the car and a vibration at higher speeds. And it sounds like this. Oh my God. Based on the noise, it's clear it's coming from the rear of the vehicle, so we're gonna do a visual inspection. When starting an inspection, you're gonna often look at things like wheel bearings for noise. You can drive the car on a lift, or you can just wiggle the wheel back and forth this way and that way to see if it has play, and we have no play. You're also gonna look at things like axles to see if you have extra play, or to identify if the noise is coming from within there. What we did find was a leak coming from the rear differential. You can see there's quite a bit right here, dripping a little bit here, dripping there. It's running all the way to the back of the car, all along the rear, which means this diff is probably a problem. Now you might think, Paul, how do you know the rear diff is shot? Well, look at this. Also, it sounds like this. Now that noise is not going to be coming from the axle itself. That's only from that flange where it goes into the differential. Now a new differential is $5,300 new from Audi. This guy's gonna be getting a used one. It's about 700 bucks. Now you might think we should rebuild this instead of replacing it, but none of the parts in this diff are serviceable except for seals and things like that. Which means if your diff is leaking, you should address it, because otherwise it'll do that. And then you'll have to buy a differential. So now a real technician named Justin is gonna be taking this car apart to replace this. He's gonna start by taking off the exhaust, the inner axles, the drive shaft, and then he's gonna take down the diff. Now that this car is repaired, we're gonna take apart the old differential to see what's inside the damaged one. This thing is let's come apart. Right. Yeah, that was so easy. There we go. Look at the heat. They're bringing the heat. You can see that metal floating around, and that's what those zebra stripes are in the gear oil. Okay. You got metal? Yeah, oh, would you just look at it?
Look at that.
No, oh, that's real glittery. Look at that. Yeah. You could really bedazzle the heck out of your clothes with this stuff. Inside the differential, there's quite a bit of metal material that you can see right here. That's actually leftover. We already picked apart a lot of it. What that came from is this bearing and race right here. It's inside there, and then there is the bearing. So running low on oil had created a lot of heat and friction, which removed a lot of material. Well, honestly, if you kept running it like this, eventually what would happen is the diff would go like this. It would start walking around like that inside the differential housing until something broke. If you were to want to rebuild this, which you can't because you can't buy the parts, you could put bearings in it and probably fix it if said bearings were even purchasable in the first place, which they're not. We've located the metal and where it came from. We thought it was from the bearings originally, but he noticed, look, if you see some scratches there, right there, and then also way more inside here. So what was happening is as the car was turning, this was moving back and forth because the bearings had worn, and so it was eating into the housing of the differential, which is probably where, look at the head of these bolts, and they all the way around have these lines on them. So as these bearings wore, it was walking back and forth this way, and the head of the bolts were scraping into the housing, which is why you see that outer edge there is eaten away. It's hard to know how long this actually would have gone if you just continue to let this go. Eventually it would just eat into enough of this that it would cause damage, and maybe enough of the case would get broken away that you'd actually break the case of the differential. Eventually something's gonna let go. You create a lot of heat and friction. So make sure you lubricate things so you don't have too much heat or friction.